Leontino, thanks so much for sitting down with me. Much appreciated. We are here attending the meeting of the UPOV Working Group for Biochemical and Molecular Techniques, the so-called BMT. Before we dive into the topics, why was it at all necessary to create this working group?
Well, it was the early 90s when UPOV agreed to establish the BMT working group to keep up with developments in plant breeding, in particular with the use of modern techniques. And the objective of the UPOV Council back then was to establish an open forum for discussions on the use of DNA-based information in the work of UPOV, in particular in the examination of DUS, but also to provide guidance on how could these methods be used in variety testing.
Okay, so and now that the group is already established for quite a number of years, what are the main topics that are being discussed?
Well, this year what we are discussing is how to promote cooperation, how to enhance cooperation amongst UPOV members. We're also looking into the approved models that we have within UPOV for using molecular markers, information in the DUS examination. So we're revising our guidance. Not only we are discussing how these methods are being used, but how the guidance should be improved to reflect developments. And also this year, we're discussing the establishment of databases. So not only the management of databases, but how could members cooperate in terms of standardizing or reaching a minimum level of standardization for exchanging information on databases.
Excellent. I know that UPOV is doing a lot of great work towards alignment between countries in all kinds of variety testing procedures. How are you going about it in greater alignment between UPOV members on these techniques?
Well, first it will be important to note that DUS examination continues to be based on phenotypical characteristics. What we're looking at is bringing members together to talk about how could they collaborate in terms of their databases. So the alignment we're looking at, there's got to be a minimum level of alignment in terms of the platforms or the format of the information so that the databases could communicate, or so that you could reuse part of the information available in other members' databases. Also, we're bringing the private sector to provide information on how plant breeding is using these technologies so that we could bring that all together in perfectioning our guidance.
Okay, that's great. These techniques have not been around for very long in variety testing, only for several years, I would say. Do you see a trend in the use of these tools?
Most definitely. If we look back at the BMT meetings some 10 or 15 years ago, well, first to start off, we used to meet every 2 years, sometimes every 3 years. Now we're meeting every year. And looking back some 10 years, we used to have a very different mix of participants. Currently, we have members and participants from the 5 continents. And this includes, for example, Latin American participants from Argentina and Brazil, from Africa, from Kenya, also from Asia, not only your more experienced examiners from European countries, for example.
That's really great. It seems to be growing, this field.
Most definitely. And you can tell also by the number of crops. There's another interesting indicator because some 10 years ago, the number of crops that we were looking at was rather restricted to those 5 core crops. So it should not only crops, but plants in general. We were looking into roses, potato, wheat, maize. Well, the BMT at its last session in 2018 looked at 42 different crops, spanning from ornamental plants to cereals, including fruit crops as well. And the expectation for this year is that we reach a number even greater than that.
Impressive. That I hadn't realized that the use of these tools and techniques had taken such a big jump in the last few years. That's good to see. In your view, in an ideal world, What would the use of such techniques look like in variety testing?
The phenotypical examination would remain as the basis for the UPOV system, yet we would be able to use molecular marker techniques and DNA-based information to speed up, to lower the cost, to help the US experts, to help PVP, the plant variety protection offices examining varieties, to replace the traditional bioassays, the growing trials, with techniques that could speed up the analysis, reaching results. Also for managing a greater number of applications being filed every year, an increasing number of varieties in the collection of varieties, to screen and narrow these down to those that need to be compared side by side on a growing trial. So we would be looking into a more thorough use of molecular markers and DNA-based information to help out reduce the size of the growing trials and facilitate the examination of the US.
If I recall well, the reduction in variety trials will also possibly lead to a reduction in the cost for the applicants.
Well, certainly. Also speeding up the time required for testing. You could replace completely a growing trial for the assessment of certain characteristics. But also it would be important to recall that for those officers that would not wish to use certain techniques, they could still grow the varieties and observe the characteristics on the field. Or if they would wish to, without being compulsory, they could replace the growing trial by the examination through DNA-based information.
Excellent. That's good news for the applicants.
Most definitely.
Thank you, Leontino.
My pleasure.